Wherever the big news story is happening, we're geared up to break it. TVC News, first with breaking news.
Good morning and thank you very much for joining us. Thank God it's Friday. Our guest this morning is Chief Johnson Chukwu. He's an economist, CEO of Cowry Assets Management Limited. So, Chief Chukwu, good morning to you. It's been quite a while. We're happy to have you this morning.
Good morning, Kuyori. It's always my pleasure to be on your program.
Indeed. And it's so particularly because help us make sense of, well, you know, the latest efforts that has been announced by this administration via the coordinating minister of the economy and finance minister Wale Edun, speaking in the middle of the week, saying that if you employ more people, then you will be getting tax breaks. You'll be getting tax breaks. And first of all, when people talk about tax breaks, for those who are not company-minded or business-minded, does tax break, what does it mean? Does it mean you excused your taxes or they are reduced?
Okay, once again, thank you for having me. Tax break, in simple terms, simply means that the government allows a taxpayer or grants the waiver to a taxpayer not to pay tax for a period of time. So that means for corporate organizations, the corporate organizations pay corporate tax, they pay education tax, and a few other tax. So if you grant a tax break, it then means that for the period of tax break, if it's 100% tax break, that they're not going to pay any tax. It's what you may call like tax holidays at a point where you can make profit and not pay tax. You know, the minister is yet to be specific on the tax, on the components of taxes that will be subject to this tax break. I think he made reference to the fact that the entities that employ a larger number of people will enjoy the tax break.
Yes.
So it then means that you have to define what number of staff will qualify a company to be granted tax break. And that, if that is done, it then means the shareholders and the directors of the company will struggle, do everything to employ more people, knowing that the amount they would have paid as taxes, they can as well use it to create jobs. And that way you have a lot more people in employment who are earning income. Instead of that income going to the government, it will most likely go to employees, as well as possibility of increasing the remuneration of staff, giving the new minimum wage, so that people will be motivated to work more and be more productive.
Well, thank you. And then withholding tax, that is another kind of tax that they face. And what? Is that to be removed? What is the latest information?
You know, when you talk about withholding tax, it is an advanced tax that is deducted on services rendered to companies and remitted to government. So it's eventually qualified as part of the final tax. So if you eliminate, if you suspend, or if you grant tax holidays to companies, then at the same time, it then means that you cannot at the same time charge withholding tax, because withholding tax is a deduction, an advanced payment of tax. So I think it will all come together. The company, I don't know whether it will qualify for it, is value-added tax. We know value-added tax is consumption tax, which is charged on items that are consumed by people or residents, entities, both corporate and individuals, in a tax jurisdiction. So whether the VAT would also be suspended, because VAT has more impact on price levels, because the motivation of the government is to fight inflation. If the motivation or the objective is to fight inflation, the tax that has most impactful effect on inflation is value-added tax, because an incremental charge on the cost of goods and services rendered in an economy. So if you take out the 7.5% VAT from any product, it simply means their price will drop by 7.5% of the original price on the shelf or on the shop floor. So that will have a direct impact on inflation. But the challenge is that one of the largest revenue sources of the government today, the federal government, is VAT. So that may be difficult for government to grant, because if it does that, it will have a very strong impact on its revenue.
Okay, now, thank you very much for explaining that. As I said, for those that are not company law, company tax savvy. But now the next aspect of it is that how well do you think this is going to work in practice? Because the whole idea is to lower operating costs, and this is supposed to affect the products of especially manufacturing organizations. But oftentimes there is a difference between the intendment. No, why did I slip into legalese? The intended effect and actually what happens on the market. You were saying that all being well, it could reduce their cost by 10%. They would then hopefully pass that on to the consumer. But it doesn't always work that way, does it? For instance, there was no announcement when the government has just announced that the whole idea of a bag of rice, you can get a bag of rice for what, 40,000 naira now to help the effort. We were hearing that civil servants allegedly were buying at that 40,000 and selling at more than 80,000. So there's a difference between what was intended and what actually happens. Is there any way that we can just safeguard the process, even though government has the good intention? Would it actually translate to the benefit of the end consumer?
Okay, before answering the core of your question, I think I want to make a few comments on the example you just presented.
Okay.
And I know that I was in one of the national television stations in the country, and I said that the distribution of a scarce commodity at a far discounted price or subsidized price will be difficult to pass on to the ultimate beneficiary, because the intermediaries will latch on it and make a quick gain on it. And I said they were going to distribute to local government employees. And I said the local government employees, see, they're the beneficiaries of the direct distribution. They would buy at 40,000 naira and sell at above 45,000 naira, because they also want to make quick gain. And eventually that's what happened. We also have to recognize how economic agents react. And one of the basic assumptions in economics is that we say economic agents are rational. So they would think logically on how to optimize their profit or reduce their cost. Once the government bears that in mind, whenever it comes up with a policy, it will have to come up with modalities of that policy that will make sure it's not circumvented by personal interests or personal aggrandizement. But back to your question, I said the tax that will have more pervasive impact on inflation is value-added tax. Because when a company sells products, at the point of invoicing the customer, they will add VAT, and they say 7.5%, they mark it up. So if they take out, if they don't have that VAT, then they can't mark it up, because you see the VAT when you see your receipt. So they're going to give you a cost that is based on their operating cost plus their profit margin, not including VAT. So that it's easier to monitor the price levels. If you have ever bought any commodity and they are given an invoice or a receipt, the receipt will always show that it was VATed. So if you go back to buy that product, you will insist on you will see not the cost without VAT. So it's easier for even consumers and other businesses to monitor whether prices have adjusted as a result of a tax holiday imposed on value-added tax. The one that will be more difficult for government to monitor is corporate tax, because corporate tax is what we call residual tax. It is based on the profit the company has made at the end of the financial year. So if you grant tax holidays on net income after profit after tax, profit before tax, then it's difficult for the company to say, look, I have actually spent this additional amount of money to employ this additional number of people solely for the benefit of enjoying this tax break. And that will be very difficult to monitor. So if the government wants to have an effective implementation of this policy, the item they should focus on is value-added tax. But I have also sounded the caveat to value-added tax. It is the strongest revenue ahead for government. Whether government would be willing to forgo it is another thing.
Well, Indeed. Thank you for pointing out that area there. I suppose it's a human condition where people still try to beat the system. As much it would appear that government is trying to do to alleviate the situation, there are those who are seeking to take undue advantage of it. The bag of rice that has been withdrawn now is an example that you also commented on. But okay, all of this being good, the situation is very bad for Nigerians in the sense that they say the inflation rate is 34.19%, and that is having a dire effect on the cost of living. Measures like this, and one can't fault the government for trying, measures like this, give me your assessment of how effective they can be.
Okay, my take is that these measures that the government had been putting in place are stopgap measures. They do not address the fundamental challenge we have with cost of living crisis, high inflation rates. And I'll tell you why. If you have a fracture and then you're under severe pain, they will give you a pain relief, maybe medication or injection that will relieve your pain. It doesn't address your fracture, but they still have to reset the bone before you are healed. You can heal up the fracture. So palliatives do not solve the fundamental issues of economic dislocation or economic challenges. We need to go to the root of the challenge. And I know, and we all know, the government knows, that the challenge we have today that is leading to the cost of living crisis are twofold. Excuse me. One is the issue of food production. We know that food production has declined materially in the country over the past couple of years. Didn't just start from this current government. If you look at the GDP figure for first quarter of this year, food production only increased by 0.18%. 0.18%. And that simply means that there was no increase in food production at a time when your population is increasing about 2.4, 2.5%. So clearly, more people are being added to the country's population and fewer food is being produced. So, we know the cause of that. We know Nigerian agriculture has remained subsistent in nature, which means it's a whole and machete farming. So you need the physical individuals to go to the farms to farm. And we know that in places like Northwest and the significant part of Northeast, and to some extent North Central, farmers are not able to go to their farms. So the quantity of food we used to produce have diminished because of insecurity. So we need to address that to resolve the food inflation crisis and the cost of living crisis. And that's why I said all these measures, including importation of rice, selling at the discount rate of 40%, 40,000 naira by 50 kilogram of rice, are palliatives. They cannot continue indefinitely. So we need to address the food production. The other leg of our cost of living crisis and high inflation rate is our exchange rate depreciation.
Yeah.
The pass-through effect of exchange rate depreciation on price levels. And that's why the solution to that is that we need to do whatever it takes to increase crude oil production. I think last month we could produce about 1.25, 1.28 million barrels a day. The first quarter of this year, our total crude production was about 1.57 million barrels a day, and that included condensate. But our budget target is 1.78 million barrels a day. And if we are not able to produce that, we will not be able to earn the foreign exchange that we require to stabilize the exchange rate and possibly lead to naira appreciation. If naira appreciates from increased crude oil sales, you're going to have lower import-induced inflation, and then you also going to have the lower cost of energy, including electricity tariff, because also partly indexed to exchange rate, including the price of fuel, including the price of diesel, and other imported items. So if you address these two things, improve crude production and then improve food production, we are going to resolve this problem on a permanent basis. Anything short of these two I mentioned are palliatives, and they are difficult to go around for a country of 218 million people. and they are also difficult to sustain over a long period of time.
Well, thank you. At this stage, let me bring in, Larry has called in. He's watching. Good morning, Larry, calling in from Ilorin. Okay, maybe Larry will try again. He probably had a question, for you to, look at. Okay, you've spoken about, at the very simplest level, everybody knows that the thing to do is to get farmers back on their farms and get production going and get a massive increase in food and all of that. Now, on the foreign exchange rate, we've heard experts say that, well, part of the problem is that we have to export a lot more than we are doing and buy a lot less than we are doing. In other words, begin to depend on what we actually are producing. How much of a challenge do you think this is? Because we understand the problem of getting farmers onto their land. That's a security issue. It's an ongoing issue, has been going like that for 15, 20 years, I don't know. So how big a challenge is it as the government grapples with all of these things and indeed are bravely promising that things are going to get better, just give us time?
Okay, let me start from the tail end of your question, your comments. Things are going to get better. We just have to be patient. Of course, things will get better in the long run. But in the long run, we are all dead. If you and I live another 50 years, I'm sure children will be coming to salute us for being among the most aged.
Yeah, it is a problem.
So what matters to an individual is that what can I experience in my country in my lifetime? My dream and ambition that I'm going to see a developed country, a developed Nigeria that will compete with the likes of South Korea in my lifetime. But that dream is slipping out of my view because as I age and the situation keeps worsening, I know it takes a minimum of 30 years of consistent development for a country to move from a third world country to at least a medium income country. And we are losing it on a daily basis. But back to the core of your question, which is the issue of we have to export more and import less. The question we ask ourselves, what can we export? If you look at our trade report, first quarter trade report, crude oil export was about 81% of our total export. Gas, which LNG, came from about 9.4% or thereabouts. So between the two of them and other gas and energy-related products, we exported more than 93% of our exports. So the rest of the items we exported, including things we imported and re-exported, like aircraft and other things, account for about 7% or so of total export. Including agricultural products. Agricultural products accounted for about 1% of total export. So in effect, how do you grow those other export items in an environment where productivity is low, cost of production is high, quality of goods produced is low comparable to what is produced elsewhere? And that's why I said we have to look at short, medium term, and long term. The long term view or strategy should be to grow all the productive sectors of the economy that we expand our export commodities. But that's not going to happen in a short time. The short term solution will be we need to improve food production to at least feed ourselves, cure ourselves of what we call food insecurity, and then produce enough energy locally to cure ourselves of energy insecurity, as well as produce enough crude to export to earn enough foreign reserve like any other major oil exporting country and stabilize our macroeconomic environment. That is the starting point. Then when we achieve that, we move to the next level, which is investing in critical infrastructure that will make for more cost-efficient productive activities. When you do that, like investing in your energy infrastructure, power supply, transport infrastructure, your logistics and infrastructure like seaports, so that people can easily export their goods easily and import easily. When you build that, then you begin to produce goods that you can export and produce them at cost that are comparable to what is produced elsewhere. So that's when you are talking of, I am now a mid-level productive economy. The level that countries like Vietnam had achieved in the past 10, 15, 20 years. That's where we should be going to. And then India is pushing towards that. China had already gone beyond that. China is now can actually be considered as a developed country. 30, 40 years ago, we were about the same level with China in terms of productive activities. But they built infrastructure that supported productive activities and production, moved to China, and China had become a developed country. So we need to take it phase by phase, starting from the basic, which is feed your citizens, give them security, produce enough foreign exchange earning to make sure that your macroeconomic environment price levels are stable, inflation rate is low, exchange rate is stable. So when we move from that, we move to the next level. But to think you can just dream that the economy will become an export-related economy, that an economy that is not internally productive cannot be an export-related economy.
Well, Larry, we just got Larry in Ilorin back. So thank you for trying again, Larry. Go ahead now, please. Do you have a question?
Yeah, good morning. Good morning, Uncle Yori, and good morning to the guest here.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah,
Good morning.
The issue of palliative, as the guest here discussed, is a good thing, which is it's like painkiller, which is what the guest here talked about. But I want to talk about the issue of rice. Sincerely speaking, there is no rice anywhere that the government gives. Let them come out openly and give us the ministry the point where they sold the rice to, and let those people that came to buy the rice and are selling the rice, let them come and pinpoint them out. There's no rice being sold anywhere. I just pity this thing. Goodbye.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Larry. That's the point that you wanted to make. Government reportedly has suspended that whole idea for now. They didn't give any particular reason for it, but you might have seen online that Bismarck Riwani, Mr. Riwani, who is an executive director of financial derivatives, he made the statement, and they usually talk only after they've gone to the market and have verified what they are going to say. So it was a coincidence that he spoke, and then there was this release from, I think it was on an official website somewhere. Okay, now going back to the point where we were on, it's like government, the managers of the economy really have their work cut out for them, because among other things, they're being called upon to reduce costs. Government is saying that there are scarce resources. It is trying to juggle it the best way it can. And for instance, we're still in the midst of this cost of living, this hardship protest that's going on, supposed to go on from the 1st to the 10th. And none of those, the majority of those who actually are taking part, unfortunately, are not privy to this kind of a conversation, do not know anything about it. And that's part of the challenge, I think. Guests have called in, even enlightened guests have called in and said, look, I don't care, I don't know how they're going to do it. They've got to bring down the cost of fuel. Well, when you say you don't care or you don't know how they're going to do it, but the cost of fuel has to be brought down because it can be done, since we're talking about matters of making life a bit easier, and people are saying that all of our woes seem to be stemming from the removal of subsidy, fuel subsidy, and its consequent hiking of the price of fuel, we see, and you have said that this whole idea of tax breaks, good as they are, that's what Larry just said, it's just a palliative, and that we're going to have to be more fundamental in our approach. And you've outlined that this is not going to happen overnight. Where does this leave us, Chief Johnson? Where does this leave us?
Okay, thank you. Where does this leave us? Let me start by elaborating on the issue of subsidy, because, like you said, on an average, Nigerian believes our woes stem from the removal of subsidy. I would say that subsidy removal is contributory, but not the core of the problem. That's what we call, in every economy, you have an anchor factor. And the anchor factor in this instance is exchange rate. Let me tell you, Uncle Yori, the price of fuel has moved from 70 kobo to a liter to about 850 naira to a liter in some locations in the country today. Why was it 70 kobo? At the time it was 70 kobo, we said it was subsidy. It moved, the subsidy, during Abacha time, the subsidy was removed, and then a petroleum trust fund was created. And at that time, fuel was, I can't remember what it was, 2 naira, 4 naira something. to a liter. And then on and on and on. And then we got to, when it was 189 naira, we got to 200 and we got to 500 and we're now at about 700 or so. The factor that is changing, that's actually moving, is not necessarily the price of plat or ice. That's the price at which fuel is sold in the international market. The factor has been shifting in our exchange rate. So whenever you have a shift in your exchange rate, whatever you import is translated at a higher naira value. And that is what is hurting Nigerians. And so the anchor factor is our exchange rate. And even when the government removed the subsidy in May 2023, the exchange rate they had projected was about 750 naira to $1. Today at exchange rate, and let me give you an instance, assuming a liter of fuel was going for $1 at 750 naira, then they simply means the pump price should have been 750 naira, assuming all other costs are factored into that $1. Simply means would have been 750 naira. Then, if the exchange rate moves to 1,500, automatically the price of fuel will become 1,500 per liter. So that's the core of the problem. And that's why people have to recognize that people who are informed, that the government, particularly the government, need to recognize that the key elephant in the room that we need to slay to keep prices stable, to bring down the price of fuel, as people are agitating, is to improve our naira exchange rate. And that will come only if we produce enough crude. If we can go back to crude production of about 2 million, 2.5 million, 3 million barrels a day, if we achieve 3 million barrels a day, okay, I can tell you that based on sound economic logic, the economy naira would appreciate to maybe about 750 naira or less in the next, once we achieve that and produce it for the next consistent 3 months, 6 months. Naira would appreciate materially. And then imported price of fuel will drop significantly. And every other thing that is imported to the country will decline in their price level, will correct downwards. So the anchor challenge is the exchange rate, that we're not producing enough crude to export, to earn enough foreign exchange, to have a stable external reserve, and that can help us meet our import obligations and help us stabilize the exchange rate. So we need to bear that in mind. The issue of subsidy, it's there, but like I said, the subsidy level, when we're buying fuel at 200 naira. So the question, as I said, what was the subsidy when we're buying fuel at 200 naira? Today, the subsidy is more than 500 naira. So is it possible the subsidy is even more than the price we are buying fuel at the same time, at that time? The answer is very simple. Exchange has moved significantly, and this is an important item. Even when you start refining everything locally, you still have to deal with the pass-through effects of exchange rate, unless you sell crude to the refinery like the president had directed in naira. But when you do that, you also have to buy the refined product from them in naira. Yes. And then the exchange rate that you used to sell the crude to them is what they will use to sell the refined product to you in naira. So if you continue to use the exchange rate at 1,500, you are still going to land at the prices that are similar to the current prices we are selling the product in the country.
Well, thank you very much for that explanation. And Mr. Lakbosi in Abuja, good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, go ahead, please. You got a question, observation, or comment?
Yes. Good morning. Good morning. Yeah, please. Thank you, Uncle Yomi,
thank you, sir,
for this platform.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead, please. We can hear you.
My contribution to this platform, or to the topic on grant,
yes,
is that our refinery must work.
Continue. Don't listen to yourself. Please continue.
Our refinery must work. Up till now, none of the refinery that is working, we have not seen anyone. And secondly, security is one of our major problems in this country. Up till now, no farmer can go to farm. The shortage of the food that people are talking about is as a result of the farmer who cannot go to access their farming. Yes, they must work on security in this country. In my place in Ondo State, as I'm speaking with you, there is no farmer that can access their farming because of the insecurity. And when farmers cannot access their farming, how can we have a food sufficient? Then the food palliative, I don't support it because it cannot work. The food palliative talking about, anytime they roll out food palliative, it is still it does not get to the real people. The people that really needed this food, it does not reach them. All the information the local government, the governor have, are the one they always have. Anytime they are distributing things, is that information they will use. And whenever they roll out another palliative again, it's still the same information. So is it those people that they have their information that will keep on getting this thing all the time? Nigeria belongs to everybody.
All right.
We discover whether from the king, whether from the emir, whenever they give them food to distribute, it's the same information they have.
I got you.
Yeah, they will use.
I got you, Mr. Lakposi. Thank you very much, Mr. Lakposi, for calling in. I got you. Chief Johnson Chukwu will react to that, but not before we go on break and we get back. Please stay with us. We'll be right back.
Doubt and fear doesn't occur at the canvas, it shows in the canvas. It shows the conation of raw earthen material slabbed, stroked and molded at a pace provided by the doubt and fear. Every move way in the struggle of one to the other, merging the past to the present, brushstrokes of colors seen but not known. For when the wailing stops, the pieces settle down in abject beauty erected for a century of a century. Speaking, advocating, protesting as the arts are meant to be.
Welcome back. Chief Johnson Chukwu, our guest this morning, Economist CEO, Cowry Assets Management Limited. I said he was going to comment on that as soon as we come back, but in the meantime, Mazi Okorafor has called in from Aro Chukwu, so let's take Mazi Okorafor before we go to Chief Johnson. Mazi, good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, our guests on Sky Ben.
Yeah.
You see, when we talk about this issue of inflation, tackling the inflation, the target and the rest, yes, I agree, the tax break which the government are going to give. Does it affect the energy? Because 99%, anything 100% that has to do with any manufacturing sectors or companies' energy. Without energy, you cannot survive. And how do you empower energy? You're empowering energy with all this oil, either diesel or anything we call it. You cannot talk about the solar because not all the companies can afford solar to capacity the capacity of their energy. And issue of government. You see, if the private sectors are not up to 80% or 70% in the focus of business, the focus of supply and demand, there is no how government can meet up. Because if you check the population of Nigeria, 70% of Nigerians, they are not in government. They are all private sectors. You now add the remaining 25%. What will happen? Let's say 25% are for the government, 75% are outsiders. How do we survive it? Because the food we are talking about today, if there are some seedlings that last for 3 months, you see having the result, the production, you see the details. Are we embarking on those things? We are not. And we see that importing. But as long as Nigerian manufacturers continue importing all these raw materials into Nigeria, you cannot balance the economy. Inflation consolidating. Now, I was using one of the dailies some hours ago, where manufacturers are saying that they have spent 1.5 trillion in terms of foreign Now look at that money that just gone in terms of other black market eating. If such money were to be injected into Nigerian economy, you know where we could have been? But that is the issue.
Okay. All right, Mazi. I beg your pardon, Mazi.
The central bank and the money laundering, they are not helping matters.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mazi, for calling in. I know there's a lot more where that came from because it's difficult sometimes to, put in a capsule the conditions and situations in the Nigerian economy. And, okay, back to you, Chief Johnson. That caller, Olaposi in Abuja, one of the points that he made was that our refineries must work. That was his summary of the entire thing. In this day when Nigerians are looking towards the largest refinery, is it in Africa, if not worldwide, the Dangote refinery, and the troubles that it has had of recent, I don't know. There are other refineries apart from that. And that contributor said that let all of those refineries work. In fact, I've even heard a commentator online, albeit social media, saying that, look, people should be agitating, protesting for all our refineries to work. That is not being done, and they are protesting about other things. How significant do you think these ideas are? I beg your pardon, Chief Johnson, I think you might have muted yourself. I think your phone might be on.
Sorry, I just observed that.
Okay. Could you please start the answer again?
When we say the refineries have to work,
yes,
it's a necessary, but for the refineries working is necessary but not sufficient to fix the challenges we have in the economy. And why do I say this? There are currently 5 refineries in the country. You have the 4 refineries owned by NNPC. There are 2 refineries, the old Port Harcourt refinery, the new Port Harcourt refinery. In Port Harcourt, you have the Warri refinery, you have the Kaduna refinery, you have the Dangote refinery. The NNPC government-owned refineries have not been working for donkey years, and they are not likely going to work because they have become largely obsolete.
Okay, so that is the comment about that. When somebody was saying that all our refineries have to work, you said that those refineries have become obsolete.
Yeah, the federal government-owned refineries. But what I was actually saying is that the refineries working is part of the solution, but not the whole solution.
Okay.
If the refineries are working, like we have Dangote working, and we don't have crude to meet their production needs, you will start to import crude. If you import crude, you are going to pay with foreign exchange. If you pay with foreign exchange, what you are going to do is we're going to have the margin is what you are saving, the margin between the cost of crude and the cost of refined product. That's what you'll be saving. But you're still going to be suffering huge capital outlay or foreign exchange outflow. And that's why I dwelt with the issue of crude production. The crude production, increasing the crude production volume, is a critical component of what we need to do to reset the economy and stabilize the macroeconomic environment. We must bear that in mind. And doing that is purely at the footsteps of the federal government. How do we win the hearts of those who live in the oil producing areas so that they stop breaching the pipelines, they stop attacking facilities in their neighborhood? They have a share of the national interest, if there's anything called that, so that they will pull back from whatever breaches that they subject those facilities to. So once we do that, we're going to see crude production ratchet up. And it has a solution to increase foreign exchange earnings. It is that even that extra crude that we produce that we're going to give to the refineries, so that we are not importing crude into the country. We must bear that in mind, and I think the government it should focus primarily on that. Okay. On what Mr. Korafo spoke about the government, that the emphasis should be on the private sector. I think the government has never denied the fact that the private sector is the engine of productive activities in the country. But the private sector is going through many challenges. We are talking of energy challenges. We talk of infrastructure deficit, including transport infrastructure. The government has said they are going to grant tax holidays. But beyond the tax holidays, there are multiple taxes that the government is imposing on the productive sector. And then you have to do with issue of logistics. You try to bring in goods, your raw materials from the seaport, and they'll be there for 1 month. You pay the mileage and increase your cost of production. So the key thing is not just that we're importing raw materials. There's no country that's self-sufficient in terms of raw material production. What matters is you have a producing economy that even when you bring in the raw materials, you produce high-quality final product that is exported at higher value. You do what we call value addition. And then if you are in an economy where there's value addition, you take input that is worth 5 naira and produce goods worth 15 naira. That economy is certainly going to be rich. And that's what successful economists have been able to achieve.
Well, okay, thank you. Yomi in Surulere, good morning to you, sir. I'm afraid I left it too long, but I was very reluctant to interrupt our guest, just so that everybody can understand it. Let it not just be the business savvy technocrats alone. So sorry about that, Yomi in Surulere. See if you could get back to us. A number of comments have been made, but I think one of the things we can take away so far in this conversation, and we have something like 10 minutes more, is that the laudable idea of federal government targeting tax breaks for companies, you stated up front from the top of the program that it's largely a palliative, and that we're going to have to look at these fundamentals, the fundamentals that you have explained already. And part of the problem now is that there's no quick fix. You explained how there has to be a sequential kind of a staircase, one step before the other, until we arrive at where we need to be. So what do we say then to people who are out there on the street, especially in the north? It's like these are the fundamentals, these are the facts of the matter. People are asking as if by fiat the president could say, you see, even some people that you would credit with not being, that these people are also knowledgeable, they will pull a figure out of the air and say, it's okay, let petrol be 150 naira, 150 naira, we can manage with that. Is Yomi back? I believe Yomi in Sulere is back. Yomi, go ahead, please.
Okay, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for calling.
Good morning, sir.
Go ahead, please.
Good morning.
My contribution is, I don't know why we know what is our problem in the country and we derive from it. Petroleum has been our problem in this country for long. And when we know that this is the origin of the problem of the country, why can't we pump money on that particular thing and make the refinery function? Why do we have NNPC in the country and we are taking our crude oil to abroad and refine and bring it back? They were budgeting money for refinery every year. Nothing was done, starting from Obasanjo regime. And we continue in this problem. And these are the things that aggravate masses, that come to all this strike, all this protest, all this everything. I don't know why our leaders are derailing from the truth in this country. We have 4 refineries, no one since 1999. Then, President went and borrowed money. Instead of him to channel the money to the refinery, first phase 2 refinery, 30 functioning. You went ahead and started Coastal Road. What economic value the Coastal Road will yield us now for this problem we have in this country? Assuming 2 refineries are functioning now, we will have a relief.
All right then, thank you very much, Mr. Yomi, calling in from Surulere. Well, Chief Johnson, he's managed to verge into policies there. I don't know if you had any sort of a commentary, because the ideas that he has put across, one can understand them, as well as one can understand, for instance, people who are saying, I don't know how they are going to do it. Let them just bring down the price of fuel.
Okay, let me say a few words to what Mr. Yumi said from Silver. It's a wish that for Nigerians that the refineries and made to work. I think I've spoken extensively on the fact that it's difficult for the refineries to work. Uncle Yori, I don't know whether you have ever seen a Citron car in Nigeria recently. Citron. I mean, for those of us in our age, they remember Citron.
Yes, yes.
Even for the younger generation, they may also remember Volkswagen wagon.
Mm-hmm.
The Beetle, the Volkswagen Beetle.
That's right.
No matter how much money you put into your Citron, you will struggle to make it, drive it from Lagos to Enugu. If you still have a Citron. If you have a Volkswagen Beetle, you are not likely going to be able to get a pass to fix it. That's the situation these refineries are. And I think the wisest thing the government to do is if the government decides to build new refineries, they can build new refineries. To continue to invest in those near obsolete refineries, I think is a waste of resources.
Okay.
But the core issue is what you are about asking before Mr. Yemi called back, which is there are people who are protesting,
yes,
and then they are not ready to listen to these stories we are speaking, that this developmental process will be sequential. We need to be sequenced, and that we are not going to see a solution in the next 6 months or 1 year. They want, which is why when I spoke about palliatives, I said palliatives are like what you call pain relief. They are necessary when people are under severe pain, but they don't solve the problem. So what they need is government to provide them some palliatives, which the rights, unfortunately, is being abused because we've not evolved a proper mechanism for distributing it. And I can recommend here that in Nigeria, one of the last bastions of morality and integrity in the country remain the religious institutions, the churches and the mosque. If you really want these rights to get to the ultimate poor, if you go use their reverend fathers, their reverend ministers, their pastors, and they use the imams, you are likely going to achieve more success in passing the foodstuff you want to give as relief to the ultimate beneficiary. Even if they have to bring a couple of families together to buy a bag of rice for 40,000 naira, they know the people know them. They are not likely going to allow a markup, they're not likely going to allow for an intermediary. So I believe the government should be fully aware of that. If you want to go through public servants at the local government level, they are likely going to abuse it. So what we need is government to evolve a mechanism to intervene in the lives of the poorest of the poor in the country. Every society has that. I mean, you have what they call social safety net in more advanced countries. You have your social security. At some point, people get even meal voucher in countries like America to cushion adverse economic impact on households. So the government has to evolve that. I thought we have a poverty register. If we have a poverty register, the government has touted about, this is now the time to deploy it and touch the most vulnerable in the society. They need that while we work towards resetting the economy and restarting growth that will ultimately win us of this crisis. And I mentioned two of those key pillars: address insecurity in northern regions of the country, address insecurities and abuses of oil facilities in the southern part of the country, particularly the south. And then in the next 6 months, if you can put your hand on those two things, you should begin to see improved food production and improved crude oil production.
Wow, thank you very much for that commentary there. And hopefully, government is listening because in relation to the palliative, the food palliative that you spoke about, government probably had a good idea, but they didn't factor in corruption. And you just suggested that there are alternative ways to try. Well, government didn't say it has cancelled it, but it has withdrawn, from what I read online, it has withdrawn the circular initiating the idea, no doubt to sort of look at it again, fine-tune it, and then go there. The very point that you made that, look, a number of families could come together to buy a bag of rice. That idea was actually in place in this one that has now been abused. I don't know if there's any connection between Bismarck Riwani's observation, public observation, and the withdrawal of the idea from government. But that's one of the things that we're going to have to deal with. So I want to thank you very much, Chief Johnson Chukwu, because in a program like this, it's not hardcore, exclusively for, those who understand these things. But at least you've given us some sort of an understanding, especially for those of our viewers that call in and say that government can do it. Let them bring the price down to, this, and this, and then it will be workable. And the other big question that is known by all, and you also mentioned it, is that of security. How do we get farmers back onto the farm? Well, thank you very much for giving us something of a better understanding of where to place government's efforts at tackling inflation via tax breaks for companies. You've sort of given us the understanding that it's good, but it's a palliative, and we have to go beyond that and work at it. Thank you very much. Johnson Chukwu, CEO, Economist and CEO, Cowry Assets Management Limited, was our guest today. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Indeed, our pleasure. So that's our program today then. Do please join us on Monday for a fresh edition. I am Yori Folari. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye for now.